Yeah, just go watch some sweet Precure if you want to get some of the answers. You won't get all of them because they had to do a lot of rewrites for that show. We opened this week with Uta learning that Tanaka was, yet again, being the most proactive character this whole damn show by researching amusement parks where they could hold concerts or kigurumi performances where legit some of the most entertaining bits of the franchise can happen. I would so rather watch that on a loop rather than this episode. But no, instead, this ended up getting Utai in the mood to go to Disneyland, and she would get that opportunity from that one old man who really needs to get a better voice actor to replace his original. Kaito saved him from pulling a cure heart, and he was rewarded with some amusement park tickets that he just so happened to win from a lottery. And of course, he got 2, so you kind of knew where this was going. And alright, just so that we're clear at the very beginning, I don't think Kaito is a predator or anything. Hell, we recently started a new weekly review series that has a much better, or worst example of such, depending on how you look at it. That said, I really don't care for this plot point for 2 main reasons. The first being... if I could roll my eyes any harder, I would turn into the Undertaker. Like seriously, Mayu's shipping antics weren't this freaking aggressive. And yet, Uta's friends were pushing so damn hard for what's clearly a puppy dog love that'll likely not go anywhere, or at the very least shouldn't go anywhere. I mean, I get being supportive, but this is just obsessive and kind of weird. And the second reason that I really don't care for this plotline is, well, Kaito himself. And again, I don't necessarily dislike the character or think he's a creep, but, well... I really should work in more wrestling references into these videos. But yeah, as I keep saying, I think it was just a big mistake to bring in an actual idol whose own schedule simply wouldn't allow him to commit to coming in regularly for recordings. And yet, in spite of this, the writers not only expect us to get into this pairing that has about as much chemistry as oil and water, but based on what happens later in this episode, he's likely going to play a significant role in the endgame to the series, which he really hasn't earned due to sheer lack of relevancy to the main plot. Bottom line, Kaito was a mistake, especially if he wasn't going to be at least a more consistent mentor character. Now, all of that aside, there are some parts of this episode that I actually do like, which, and let's be honest, has always been one of the true couplings from the very beginning of this franchise, the Yuri as the Cures decide to go on dates with each other. Though interestingly enough, they decide to change things up a little. You're swingers. Also, oh yeah, these two had human forms. Kinda forgot since they hadn't made any reference or usage of this ability for the last few episodes. It's almost as if the show has a tendency to haphazardly throw in a bunch of plot points and leave them hanging on the vine for a while, but that's not really a thing now, is it, right, Kaito? Okay, but seriously, I did enjoy these side plots way more than the main one with the most milquetoast shoujo manga pairing ever. On the Kokoro/Preen side, we got a pretty fun little misadventure of the two looking for seashells that wouldn't be for some weird joke about toilet paper, but rather a wholesome bit of them trying to create a set of them for their team. It was nice, and did show that in human or fairy form, Prune was still a little goober. Still kind of wish that they'd given her amnesia storyline a little more to work with, but I've already said my piece about that. And at least it led to this pretty funny bit. Obviously nowhere near as good as last week's fan jokes, but still not bad I guess. Meanwhile, the Nana/Marilyn side had a little more to it, if only because it led to a little actual character development for these two. Nana was able to show off her thoughtfulness by helping her look for a book across 2 libraries, and Marilyn showed that not everything in her head revolved around her sissy. Granted, I am now starting to think that her true wish was to make a Yuri harem. I mean, it would make more sense than her actual revelation to show. Still, legit cute stuff, and honestly, this does feel like a slightly healthier pairing for Meron. I mean, come on, you really should at least do better than the fairy who's as dense as a black hole. However, we inevitably had to go back to our main plot, which featured Kaito being a bit of a Gary Stew, and of course, just so much of the will they, won't they.
The thing is, I really don't care.
Now, to be fair, there was a little development for Kaito with him hinting at a good friend that he had seemingly had a falling out with. It wasn't much, and I feel like we've already hinted at this in previous episodes, but it was something. And of course, they made it pretty damn obvious that said friend was Jogi. So yeah, he'll likely play into this character's backstory, which of course they'll try to keep all mysterious and such, even though we really should be fleshing out the actual big bad of the show, but oh well. Anyway, he of course created a Monster of the Week with some very random kid. Call me crazy, but I think we're kind of stretching the idea of what darkness counts as. I mean, it's less emotional negativity like it usually is, and more physical that he'll probably get over in just a few minutes, but I guess they also had to work in some obvious foreshadowing from earlier in the episode, when Uta recollected an incident on one of those spinning teacup rides, where she ended up making her dad sick. The one kind of interesting bit we got was seeing what happens to the Precure when Meron activates her heart garden, and hey, at least it lets me use this clip.
消えた。
Going into the fight, and while it was always likely going to be a downgrade from last week's hilarious masterpiece, this is still a pretty below average exchange, as it consisted mostly of everyone using their signature attacks as usual, and makes me realize that they've become kind of a crutch for the season's fights. The only kind of entertaining bit was of course Uta getting swept up by the monster and forced to experience a little karma for making her old man blow chunks. It was a little funny, though they could have done a lot more with it. I mean, just look at Yuri for good example. Anyway, she quickly recovered just in time for their finisher. With that, they defeated the monster, and Jogi retreated without ever him or Kaito ever even noticing each other, as they really have to stretch out this plot point for as long as possible, again due to Kaito's VA not being able to do more than a few hours worth of recordings at a time. Speaking of whom, he and Uta wrapped up their date amicably enough, and the episode ended with her friends asking for the deeds, when really they all had much better and more productive dates than them. This episode was boring. Like, other than the Yuri dates, the main date, aka plot of this episode, was with a character who's just been the most poorly developed of the whole cast. Like, sure, there were some small developments for Kaito, but they didn't need to dedicate a whole episode to it. Interestingly enough, this episode was written by Akiko Inoue, who has actually laid out another romance subplot with an idol in #1 Sentai Gojuger, which she is head writing. In fact, writing romance stories tends to be a bit of a trademark of her family, from her granddad to her dad. Granted, she doesn't write stuff as nearly trashy or schlocky as her old man, though in an episode like this, I do also kind of wish there was a little more meat on the bone. No trashy meat like her dad, but some kind of cartilage at least, because the main plot between Uta and Kaito just really dragged. Like, I'll fully admit, I'm not the target audience for the show, though at the same time, the grumpy old man in me doesn't like how all of Uta's friends were peer pressuring her into pursuing what's clearly a puppy love that would never likely work out. I don't know, I just don't feel like it's good to be encouraging the target audience to pursue what's likely not going to be a very meaningful relationship, because this really just feels like your typical shoujo manga romance, albeit one of the most G-rated variety. Now granted, the episode was kind of held up by the Cures dating each other. It wasn't much in the grand scheme of things, other than reminding us that the fairies had human forms, but it was something, I guess. It was also a little more meaningful than the not-so-subtle hints that Kaito and Jogi were friends. Again, I feel like we've already gotten hints of this, and this was just really reaffirming it. But I guess that's the thing with Kaito Hibiki, they just really need to stretch out his plotline, because his VA isn't around enough, and yet somehow they have to keep him as some sort of significant character. Thus, and while I don't dislike the character himself, I just can't stand his application to this plot. I think that aspect in particular makes me overall really apathetic to this episode in spite of some fairly decent aspects. With this, Kaito will likely be gone again for a little while, and for me at least, he's not going to be missed if he keeps giving us episodes like this. Thank you for watching, and in case you're wondering, yes, unless it's a particularly important episode, we are just going to be moving these reviews to Monday mornings going forward. Honestly, I just want to cover Tojima Wants to Be a Kamen Rider more, as so far, it's been a really good series that I think deserves a lot more attention. So, look forward to it, as well as Princess Jin tomorrow. And until then, though, farewell for now, my friends, and, nope, I think Mom's tripping up on herself again. That's funny.